And coming to us from, well, potentially a car park near you, political commentator Dr. Bryce Edwards. Bryce, kia ora, good morning. Thanks so much for your time today.
Morning, Andrew. Yes, I'm in Nelson today, visiting my father, and I've just popped out of the cafe where I've taken him for a coffee.
Okay.
So, yeah, excuse any car noises or the Nelson public.
That's absolutely fine. So very much appreciate your time today. Hey, busy week in politics, actually, and we were talking the other day about the government's next to-do list. Well, they certainly came out of the gates roaring on Monday with, 9 key areas in terms of public service targets. These aren't low-hanging fruit. They're setting themselves some pretty tough targets to be held accountable for.
Oh, yes, and I think these are going to be very popular because, this is something that the John Key government was quite big on, having some sort of metrics to measure a government's performance by.
Yep.
And those were popular back then, but I think after the last 6 years of the Labour government, where they had a lot of criticisms for not actually achieving enough and not really people not knowing what they were trying to do, I think this will resonate with the public that they're saying, well, this is what we're going to do, and you can judge us against it. And we'll get quarterly reports coming out that will show you progress on these targets. I mean, there are people that are saying, well, this is like trying to run a country like a business, that maybe this is too much of a chief executive sort of role that Luxon's trying to squeeze New Zealand into. But I don't think that will resonate much with voters who do actually want to see some big changes. So, they won't care too much about what the exact targets are as long as the government's actually doing something.
Although, to be fair, these are, well, I would describe these 9 targets as 9 impossible things to do before breakfast. These are some very, very ambitious goals. And I suppose the political risk on this is we're saying, hey, this is what we're aiming to do. Hold us accountable to this. Are they setting themselves up for fail at election time if they haven't got anywhere near these targets?
Oh, well, that is the risk. And I mean, yes, the last government, sometimes had some targets like the 100,000 Kiwi build houses that never quite eventuated. So, there is that risk. But for once, I guess it's a government being ambitious, and if that's naive, they might come to have some egg on their face, but better that than the other way around, in my view.
And I think, again, this is pretty safe ground, as there's not many New Zealanders that would disagree with the types of targets that they're looking at. They want better educational standards, they want lower truancy rates, they want a fewer number of people dependent upon unemployment benefit. These are good things that I think people of every political stripe would say our country would be better if this was happening.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, they'll have different methods to achieve them than other politicians would, and that's where it gets more ideological. But no, they're all fairly consensus type results that I think everyone would want. It's really just whether it's a gimmick or whether it's a real thing, and it's a bit early to say, but they've certainly, given their opponents something to measure them against.
Exactly.
So I think
it's a difficult thing to push back against, actually. If everybody thinks it's a good idea, if you're the party going, well, that's a terrible idea, then it's not going to look good. Interested as well with yes, there's quarterly reports, but the finish line for these targets is 2030, which is, a bit further out than the last election. Some aspirational goals there to be more than a one-term government, it seems.
Look, that's a good point, and it looks ambitious, and it looks like they're confident, and I think Luxon's always quite good at looking confident.
Yeah.
Some would say overconfident, but and it also gives them a bit of an out because it is quite a way in the future, and so if they don't have a lot of progress, towards this by next election, they've got that justification. Oh, well, give us another term, give us another 2 terms.
Yeah, exactly. Now, something about, I suppose, these types of targets, and as you mentioned, is it a bit too corporate? Well, Christopher Luxon and John Key have that in common, both from corporate backgrounds, I suppose. But another thing which is very corporate is if you hit your targets, then you get your bonuses. Something else on the table at the moment is pay rises for politicians. And yeah, I mean, this political football's been kicked into touch for many years now. Should we go corporate on this and go, well, hey, if you hit your targets, you can have your bonuses?
Yeah, so how much we pay our politicians has always been a fraught issue, and there's no right or wrong answer on this at the moment. There is a degree of performance pay for politicians in the sense that you start at the bottom as a backbench MP. You start on sort of about 170,000. If you become the leader of the opposition or a cabinet minister, you're on about 300,000. And if you become the prime minister, you're just about up to 500,000 a year.
Yeah.
But yeah, some people say that we should have more performance pay, but how do you do that? Because we all have different sort of metrics of what we think is good performance from a politician. So re-election is really the best sort of metric. And so politicians, some argue for that they should be paid a lot more. And you've had some voices this week. Jason Walls from News Talk ZB is saying that the Prime Minister really should be getting over $1 million a year. And he makes an argument that, well, if you look at other CEOs, which essentially is what a Prime Minister is, they earn in New Zealand many millions of dollars. And, the person that replaced Luxon as CE of Air New Zealand gets about $3 or $4 million a year. So, if we want to get these talented people in from the corporate world, we really have to, not pay peanuts, or else you get monkeys.
Yeah, the question remains whether we just want corporate people and ex-lawyers and, soon to be lobbyists as our politicians. However, I suppose the question in that regard is, do we want a situation where the only people who can afford to be MPs are people who have got significant financial means in the first place? That's not necessarily a representative democracy.
That's the big issue, yes, about them being representatives. And some people say, well, they're there to do a public service. They're not there to enrich themselves. We should pay them something, and they should be comfortably off. But the problem is, if you pay them too much, they are part of an elite. They are part of the 1%. And they don't really have the same struggles in life, paying bills. The housing affordability problem doesn't really kick in, and there's always a problem that they might not therefore deal with those problems because they just don't really feel the cost of living crisis, etc. But yeah, I mean, it's a difficult one. I myself think they are paid more than enough, but certainly they have had something of a pay freeze over the last 5 years, and there's currently the Independent Remuneration Authority is doing a review of how much MPs should be paid, and that review will come out in the next few weeks. I suspect it's going to suggest a much higher pay rate for MPs, and when they recommend that, it's actually binding on the MPs. And so the MPs are going to be embarrassed, I think, by having much higher rates of pay at a time of of a cost of living crisis when public servants and government departments are being slashed, and so it will be something of a backlash if that happens.
It is a terrible look for a government to say, hey, everyone tighten your belts, we're off to buy a bigger pair of pants. Honestly, that's never going to go down well. However, of course, I suppose it's up to the individual MPs what they do with that money. They could say, hey, I've received this increase, I'm going to give all of it or half of it to my favourite charity. I mean, that would be a PR opportunity coming begging. What they do with it's up to them, I suppose.
I think we will see that. And yeah, absolutely fair enough. And there'll be, I think there will be campaigns and there'll be pressure on MPs to fund all sorts of NGOs and charities and give to the less fortunate. But they can actually change the law if they want to. If they really want to, they can say, no, we don't accept having a pay increase. We'll legislate and override this. But yeah,
interesting
that will also be problematic.
Exactly, interesting to see what happens in this space. Bryce, we'll let you get back to your morning tea. Thanks so much for being on the program today.
Yep, back to my latte.
Cheers.
Thanks, Andrew.
Hey, thanks very much for joining us in the Rhema studio. Thanks very much for watching the interview. It's kind of nice to have an audience, actually. And if you did like what you watched, then do give us a like, do give us the thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more interviews like that one, or perhaps even better, subscribe and those interviews will come straight to you. Don't forget to turn on your notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.